I'm just about that action, boss. A quote from professional football player Marshawn Lynch has resonated with me for as long as I can remember. A call to action perfectly wrapped into 6 words. Little did I know these 6 words would set the stage for a transformative journey that led me to a concept I live by every day. 2020 was a hard year. Like many others, I was depressed for much of it. I was working remotely as a recruiter for a tech company and practicing self-care the best I could. I started meditating and finding time between Zoom meetings to honor my breath. And then George Floyd was murdered. The grief, anxiety, and rage I felt were beyond overwhelming. Yet we were all still expected to continue to go to work as if nothing had happened. This dissonance was not going to be okay for me anymore. It was time to be about that action. In just 3 days, I organized one of the largest protests in Santa Cruz County's history. Over 5,000 people gathered, shutting down Westcliff Drive with a clear demand: center our local Black, Indigenous, and people of color community members. This experience taught me a valuable lesson: the power of action and being about that action. It altered my perspective on how to create monumental shifts within our systems. The changes we dream of begin within ourselves, reflected in how we show up daily. It brought me to the concept of values as verbs, and how radical systemic change boils down to each of us showing up and being about that action. Living our values as verbs works. I've spent the last 4 years taking action in making, shaping, shifting, and bending my own personal reality to make it possible. So many of my dreams and visions for this world come from my own personal values of joy, justice, love, and courage. When I move away from feelings of fear, doubt, insecurity, and hopelessness, and toward my values, I am empowered by possibility. The emotional shift creates an opportunity to take action and lean into something better that serves not only myself, but also my community in a more meaningful, intentional, and impactful way. I led that first protest with 0 organizing experience. And then a few days later, when I saw a flyer for a paddle out honoring George Floyd, I decided to go. A paddle out is a traditional Hawaiian tribute to the life and legacy of people who have died. In our small surf town of Santa Cruz, they happen often, but I had never been to one. I messaged the organizer, questioning plans for equitable access for our Black and BIPOC community, and ensuring that we felt welcomed, centered, and included. The conversation led to a community call to action, ensuring access to resources, including equipment, know-how, and a loving and intentional space for our Black and BIPOC community. When I suited up to brave the ocean for the George Floyd Memorial Paddle Out, I had never been on a surfboard before. Yes, I was honoring George Floyd, but I also realized I was honoring myself in a lifetime of feeling like I don't belong as a Black mixed-race woman in predominantly white spaces. I also knew I was honoring my dad at the paddle out. My dad was a Black man who spent his entire childhood not knowing how to swim. He never got the opportunity to be in the ocean to float, release, or heal. He died of cancer in December 2018 after a nearly decade-long fight. My dad was one of the brightest humans ever. Even during his illness, he showed up with joy, strength, and courage. To this day, it enrages me that he had to spend his entire life being brave, strong, and resilient. My dad held so much pain and trauma in his body that it physically manifested into illness, similar to the pain and trauma that myself and countless others hold due to generations of systemic racism. The work I do is in honor of myself, my dad, and my community. It takes courage to acknowledge this trauma and paddle up to the mostly white lineup in Santa Cruz. But this lineup is everywhere. It's reflected through corporate America, private schools, sports teams, and community gatherings. As Black people in America, we have to paddle up to the lineup every day. So why was I about to knowingly go and do this in the middle of the ocean? Here was a choice. Learn to navigate yet another space in industry dominated by white supremacy, or paddle up and do it differently this time. I chose to do it differently and haven't looked back since. I created Black Surf Santa Cruz so that Black and BIPOC bodies can experience joy, release, and reconnection with ourselves, our community, and our earth. So we can have spaces where we show up authentically and not have to shrink ourselves or placate. So we can teach white bodies and allies how to de-center themselves and be of service to Black and BIPOC folks. Equity in action, values as verbs. Black Surf Santa Cruz is designed to be a tool for understanding and navigating the many barriers that affect all of us, especially our Black communities. It's a tool and vehicle for greater insight into the tangible ways to right historical wrongs and heal from that trauma together. It's a lens into viewing the ways that society keeps us disconnected from our truths, like the reality that surfing has native roots to, yes, Hawaii, but also to West Africa, with many Africans having deep ocean and water relationships prior to the transatlantic slave trade and the harsh realities of American history. Black Surf Santa Cruz is profound ancestral work. We center Black community members in our programs alongside other historically and presently excluded people. We ask that white supporters and allies unlearn racism as a part of their journey in supporting us, and that they take action in breaking down systems. We measure success not only in numbers, but by the smiling faces emphasizing their comfort and joy. And when we hear, "I can't believe I did that. That was the first time swimming in the ocean. And my parents would have been so proud to see me doing this." I chose the name Black Surf Santa Cruz because I firmly believe that anti-Blackness is at the root of many of the issues within our society. We can't transform that pain into goodness without first facing, naming, and acknowledging it. And so, by wearing my values, my heart, and my mission on my sleeve, I give you the choice to opt in or opt out based on where you are in your personal anti-racism journey. It takes deep interpersonal commitment to shift culture and systems and to move people closer to equity and justice. Black Surf Santa Cruz isn't just a moment, it's a movement. It's about institutionalizing values and creating lasting systemic change. We teach free surf lessons, host liberation paddle-outs birthed from the vision planted at the George Floyd Memorial Paddle-Out, and have successfully and joyfully challenged systems while advocating for equitable coastal access on a local, regional, and state level, including updating signage and creating processes for reporting acts of intolerance and hate at our local beaches. This is what being about that action. This is what being about that action looks like. Values are not just words on paper, but a driving force for dismantling systems that do not align with this vision. It's about disrupting power dynamics and moving beyond mere diversity statements and optics to actively build equitable systems. It's not just about having values. It's about living your values as verbs. One of my earliest childhood memories comes from a summer pool party with family friends. I remember the moment when, caught up in the excitement, I leapt into the pool. But the problem was, I didn't know how to swim. My dad jumped in after me, but he didn't know how to swim either. I remember hearing screaming and commotion, and my pregnant mom's voice shouting above the water, "Neither of them know how to swim." Other parents quickly jumped in after us, and shortly after, my dad and I were enrolled in swim lessons together. In a moment of crisis, my dad jumped in. His value of courage drove him to action. Like my dad, I made the leap. I started a surf organization before I had ever surfed. Because I needed it. My community needed it. And together we're learning to swim and surf and be in the water, in community, in healing, and in solidarity. Be about that action. Every small act and every deliberate choice contributes to the transformation of yourself and the world around you. Explore your values, try new ones on, and consider the ways you want to show up. Being about that action and embodying our values as verbs is how we transform systems together. Thank you.